All right, diving in today, we're taking a closer look at Canada's travel advisories, specifically for the US and China.
Yeah, some pretty noteworthy updates coming out of Ottawa recently. We're going to try to break it all down for you. Make sure you're in the loop for any upcoming trips, short or long.
Absolutely. So, first up, the US. Looks like there's a new registration requirement if you're staying longer than a month. What's the deal with that?
So basically, any Canadian planning on spending more than 30 days in the States, well, they now got to register with the U.S. government.
Interesting. Not just a friendly suggestion then, huh? Sounds kind of serious.
Yeah, it's a requirement, actually.
Okay.
And what's really important to note is if you don't, you could be looking at penalties, fines, even a misdemeanor charge. Not ideal.
Definitely not. Misdemeanor, that's still it's still a legal thing, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's less serious than a felony, but you don't want to mess with it.
No kidding. So how do people make sure they're doing everything right? Where do they go for the details?
Good news is there's some good resources out there. The Canadian Advisory points folks to the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services website. It's got all the steps for registration. And if you're already in the U.S., you can check the U.S. Customs Border Protection website. Look up your I-94 form. It's like the record of your entry. Yeah. And it might show if you were automatically registered when you arrived, but, double-checking the specific requirements never hurts.
Makes sense. Now, zooming out a bit, there's always some chatter going on about trade between Canada and the US, even some far out talk about Canada becoming part of the US.
Right.
Do these kind of bigger picture geopolitical things, do they play into these advisory updates at all? How are Canadians feeling about heading south these days?
Well, it's definitely it's a complicated landscape for sure. The direct link isn't always super clear, but these bigger conversations, they definitely can impact policy and the vibe at the border. I mean, we've seen some recent cases like that Canadian woman who got detained at the U.S.-Mexico border because of a work visa thing. Some folks might see that as a sign of, increased scrutiny, I guess you could say. Really highlights why it's so important to follow all the entry and stay rules, every single one.
Yeah, no, that makes it super real for sure. Okay, let's switch gears over to China now. Seems like the advisory's gotten a lot more serious, especially for folks with dual citizenship. What's the main takeaway there?
So the bottom line is Canadians really need to be extra cautious in China, like high degree of caution. That's what the advisory says. And if you're a dual citizen, Canadian and Chinese, and you're going to China using your Chinese passport or ID, you might not be able to get Canadian consular services. China doesn't recognize dual citizenship, and that could be a huge problem if you run into any legal issues.
So having a Canadian passport might not even be enough in some cases.
Exactly. And this really hits home with, what Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly said about the 4 Canadian dual citizens who were executed for drug offenses. Canada's come out strong against that, showing how different the legal systems are.
Oh, wow. And what's China's take on all this?
The Chinese embassy, their statement was that these cases were dealt with according to their laws, and that it shows how seriously they take drug crime, zero tolerance policy, they said. This difference in viewpoint, it really shows the challenges Canadians could face in the Chinese legal system.
Absolutely. And beyond the dual citizenship thing, the advisory also mentions like Canada's kind of limited in how much they can help their citizens in China in general, right? Why is that?
It all comes down to, the level of transparency or lack of it in China's judicial system. It really restricts what kind of assistance Canada can offer. This impacts everything, from getting info about legal proceedings to making sure people are treated fairly. And it's not just serious crimes either. The advisory talks about harsh punishments for nonviolent stuff like financial offenses, even the chance of getting an exit ban slapped on you if there's an open investigation, even something like a business dispute. Yeah. Things you might not even think about until you're trying to leave.
Yikes. Okay, so for everyone listening, to sum it all up, the U.S. wants you to register for longer stays, and there are real consequences if you don't. For China, the message is be super careful, especially if you're a dual citizen, because Canada might not be able to help you out as much as they'd like.
Exactly. It's all about knowing that when you travel internationally, you're dealing with different legal systems. Being informed is like your first line of defense.
Definitely a good reminder. This whole deep dive really shows that getting ready for a trip abroad is way more than just packing your suitcase. You got to know the rules and the potential risks of where you're going.
And this brings up a really important question for you to think about. With these travel advisories changing, how might you change your own travel plans? How important is it to really understand the laws of the place you're going before you even book that ticket? Being a prepared and informed global traveler, That's what it's all about.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with more insights to help you navigate the world safely and smartly.
Stay tuned.